Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Love SND. I am Dipti, your host, joined by Sheena and Nina, co host sisters. And today we are talking to one of the most, if not the most important person in our lives. We are
Yep.
talking to Papa Vade. Hi, Dad.
Yay.
Hi
Hi, Dad.
guys, how you doing?
So, just to give you some perspective on our lives, words like sperm, eggs, embryos, those were all colloquial words in our home, things that we talked about over the dinner table. So, a lot of what you're going to hear today is us taking for granted our knowledge, our exposure, just being able to go through parts of life, not having to have to do the research and the finding of the people and the experts. We're blessed, to say the very least. If this is at all a sensitive topic for you, we are going to be discussing a lot of things about infertility, fertility, uh, anything in that realm. If it is sensitive for you, now is probably the time you want to skip this episode. But if it's not, and you are interested in the topic, or you went through something like this, or your loved one did, this is just a background on, again, one of the most amazing people in the field of IVF. And Sheena is going to take it over. So go ahead, Sheen.
Hi, guys. So, welcome to our podcast as usual. And, Dad, thank you so much for being here. So, if anybody doesn't know a little bit of background about our dad, he is an embryologist and he became an embryologist back in the day when this wasn't so well known. And we're just going to discuss a little bit about his journey, my journey with him, and our journey as a family being raised in a family like this. So 16 years ago, my dad made my twins, Sean and Shailen. And at that time, my husband and I were struggling to conceive, but in a place where we weren't unable to conceive, we were just struggling to. And that's when dad kind of stepped in. And it wasn't so talked about in our South Asian culture. And that's really what we're going to dig into today, just the taboo that it was, the journey that it was, and how it's become so normalized now, as opposed to what it was about 16 years ago. So, Dad, welcome again to our episode. And maybe if you could just give our listeners a little bit of background on your journey to becoming an embryologist and what it was like back then to what it is now, and how you even landed in embryology.
Thank you guys for having me. I never imagined we would talk about this in this way in a podcast, for instance. And I am glad that all three of you have made it and trying to interview me on this podcast regarding IVF and how I started IVF.
Yep.
So it's all started back in 1983 in England when IVF was still developing. It was very, very early stages of IVF at that point. And I happened to be, like you say, in the right place at the right time. That we were experimenting on IVF itself, and I just happened to fall in that place with no training at all at that point. It was all hands-on learning at that time. And I developed such an expertise at that point. And since then, of course, the whole IVF field has changed. But back in the days, I mean, it was just incredible what was happening in this field. So, I mean, we were actually one of our medical directors was smoking over us while we were doing egg retrievals or
Oh
egg
my
sets.
God.
And,
Oh my.
there was no sterility issues at that point. And then we still had pregnancies. So it wasn't that, people were not getting pregnant, but there were like 10% rates at that point.
Hmm.
So it was an incredible journey.
Dad, your family is in jewelry, right? Like Bapuji
I
was
can say
in
that, right?
watchmaking. Um, And then even your brothers kind of fell into that too, like businesses, right? And then I think Chandu Kaka, not so much. But what makes you comfortable and confident enough to go into such an industry that's brand new, that's still experimental, and then not only get into the field, but then leave the country to go work in New York?
I am a sibling of eight, and I was the first one that actually rebelled against my parents wanting to go to university, because there was nobody who had been to that extent, and we moved in from Africa, so we studied in England, and at that point we went to university in England and graduated from there. But my family was all into jewelry business at that time, and it was either going to jewelry business or something that I studied in the university. So I decided to actually go into the scientific field, and I started off basic, very basic, back then. And since I was working in a hospital and they were actually initiating an IVF program at that time, I was one who was actually kind of brought into the team in order to expand our team to do this IVF. And it was very, very beginning. At that point, a lot of other places were opening up. So I worked in that field for 1 year in England. And at that time, there were a lot of places in America actually starting off IVF at that time. So we were getting a lot of people coming over to England to understand the whole field of IVF.
Mhm.
And at that time, a physician from Columbia University came over to visit at our place in England and invited me to go to USA and talk about this to other centers in USA, which I did in 83. And then in 84, I was able to actually make a move, which was with all three of you. And at that time, Dipti, I think you were only 3 months old.
Yeah. Well,
And,
you
85,
came,
yeah.
and
yeah,
that
you
was,
came before I was even born.
yes, I came before you were born, and I kind of moved in. And then 6 months later, you guys all
Yeah.
got me and you
So
were
crazy.
born. So I'm sorry I missed your birth at that.
It's okay. You
Sorry,
made
not
up for
sorry.
it. You made up for it in a very, very big way.
So it it was difficult to make a move when there
Mhm.
was nobody. I only had one friend in USA, and Benny uncle, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was my only friend in USA that I knew, and he's the one who actually pushed me to come here as well. And at that time, I just left. Nobody was happy me leaving UK because it was the whole family was there.
Yeah.
But I decided it was time to go and, see what's out there in the other part of the world. And I
Mm.
made that move and never looked back.
Yeah.
So, that's something that's it's
You're
always
so
stuck with me.
cool, Daddy. So cool.
But it was interesting. It was an interesting move. It was hard.
Mm.
It was to a new city. It was all different. I mean, within the first 6 months, I said, I don't want to stay here. I want to go back.
Mm.
Because you were missing family, and it was hard. But once you guys all came over, it was a little different, and
Yeah.
well, then it's history after that. So
Yeah.
Then you had no time
that
to
was
think about anything except work and us and work and
that's
us.
it. That's all I
Yeah,
did.
That's it.
exactly.
So unfortunately, I didn't have too much time for you guys, and that's why I'm spending a lot of time with my grandkids now.
Yep. That's it.
Amazing.
All right, let's fast forward to when now we're all of age, we're all married, and Sheena and Sammy are trying to conceive.
Yeah. So, like I said, as I mentioned, when Sammy and I were trying to conceive, it was more about, and we went through this with dad and his team, that it was more about just the stress and pressure of having a child in our culture and our society. It was like, okay, you've been married 8 years and we got married really young. Now it's time to start having kids. And it was like the family pressures, outside pressure, society pressures, like on the staying on this timetable, which I feel like not every culture is that stressful to have a child, just specifically in ours for some reason. But anyway, that stress was there. It became hard. And, Dad, I know you can explain this too. I didn't realize at that time that not medical reasons are not the only reason that you can't have a child or conceive. It's also stress plays a
Oh, yeah.
role,
A lot
right?
of factors are involved. And I think in your case, I think it was called unexplained infertility. You
Yeah,
were trying
that's
but not
right.
able to get pregnant.
Yeah.
I think for Sheena, it was easier because I was in the field and she
Hmm.
said, I got free IVF because there was.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of the
Yeah, because
accessibility.
IVF is not cheap.
Right.
And,
100%.
so, it was easier
Yeah.
to actually just delve into that at that.
Yeah. And
So
we did try like a round of
that's
IUIs and Clomid, and we were like, usually there's a pattern, like you have to try a few rounds of one thing and then the next, it's like there's a progression. And Dad was like, let's just get it done. I don't have time for all of
Yeah.
this. So it was kind of like we got it done, and thankfully it worked the first round. But Dad, was that because I was your daughter as a patient versus an outsider as your patient, was that different for you
no,
emotionally or anything like that? Or it was
not
just
really. I
business as
mean,
usual?
of course, you're dealing with your own daughter's gametes, and
Crazy.
it's. I would say, it was,
Hmm.
but you were treated like anybody else. It's not that we can do anything different to you that we would have done different to the others.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I feel like
so
every patient who walks through dad's doors is like, no,
yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
I
they
don't want to
come
say like a
for a
daughter,
reason,
but like he puts
right?
exactly, you put the same amount of
Exactly. I
effort and
mean,
energy and love
they,
and
I mean,
care
they
into
all deserve. They
everybody.
spend a lot of money on this, and is something that they deserve the best out of all this, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately, in your case, we didn't have genetics at that time.
Yeah.
So,
You did. I remember vaguely when we had the twins, you just chose the two healthiest embryos,
that's right.
no matter what they were. It was just like, these are the two best ones. Let's put them in. And we had decided to put two just to kind of like, so we didn't have to do it again anytime soon. And at that time we were like, okay, maybe one will take, one won't. Like, let's just put the two in, and
Yeah, I
there are
mean,
my
that was
twins.
different during those times because nowadays you can't put more than one. Even, there's a lot of factors involved, for us to put two embryos back. But
Oh,
Really?
yes, you can only have one at a time. You cannot, because the actual cost of having twins is so high.
yeah.
Uh, Even
Tell me
hospital
about it.
costs and all that, that's why they don't even, it's not safe to have twins
Hmm.
because sometimes, so
And Dad, would you say that like overall the age that people are trying or using IVF as a service has gotten older? And maybe that's part of the reason why too? Or no?
yes, I mean, your age to get pregnant is between, I would say, about 25 to 30. That's your prime age,
Yeah.
right? After that, it gets difficult. I mean, things change in your body, the hormones change, right? Everything is now taking effect in your body. It's affecting the air quality and all that stuff
Mhm.
as well. But nowadays, with the women, having high professions and they want to work till later, so now they've actually chosen to have kids later, and that's where the problems occur more and more. So
But they're also like
Challenges.
freezing their eggs and stuff now too,
that's
right?
the
Like
new
at a younger
technology
age.
now, right? That's available.
Yeah.
So a lot of them actually freeze their eggs in their 30s, and if they're not married by 30, they
Yeah.
freeze their
Yeah.
eggs and get married later and still be able to use their frozen eggs.
Yeah.
And the success is just as much as similar to fresh eggs nowadays. So
Dad, does the quality of a man's sperm change as they get older, or is it just the woman's eggs that change?
no, the sperm change too, because there is genetic issues as well in there too, right? So
Okay.
you have to consider that as well. I mean, it's not as taboo to consider men as a problem rather than women.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
Yes.
always
I
that
th-
case where the guys get away with it.
Yeah, yeah.
thinking that they're,
They're
immortal in
fine.
the sense they can do whatever they want or
That's a
whenever they want,
full-on
right? So,
society issue.
so
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, there are genetic issues there too, which we
So
yeah,
don't, they don't
yeah.
get tested as much. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
you know,
And truly, most of the time when people think that there are infertility issues, it's on the woman, right?
yeah,
They think
first.
that it's the woman's issue, but
yeah,
that's
it's
not
Yeah,
supposed to be
necessarily
fifty
always true.
fifty when you come in,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
So when you do a patient intake, or let's say a couple can't get pregnant, do you test both woman
both, yes,
and
they both
male?
come in. Yep, yep, they do.
Always, even back in the
Always,
day?
always,
Okay,
always. Back in the day as well, they both got treated. I mean, uh,
tested.
there are cases when the husbands think they are fertile, but when they come in for a test and we find there's no, you
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
So I have an interesting question. Now, in these past, I want to say this past decade, you've been treating a lot of South Asian clients as well, right? More than you did when you first started in the field.
sure.
Have you come across situations where the man is hesitant or unwilling to test, saying, "Okay, this is like, figure it out. It's not me, it's her."
I think, nowadays most of the patients when they come in, they know there's a
They're
problem and
educated.
they
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that both have to be tested
Okay.
prior to
Okay.
even entering this IVF part, right?
Yeah.
Even IUI, for instance, they have to be tested, both of them. So
Yeah.
Mm.
because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. You could be treating the woman and then not knowing that he's infertile all along,
Yeah.
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 And that makes sense because it's so expensive. So why would you just test half the situation
Equation.
versus
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
all
Yeah.
of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dad, just just speaking of the whole South Asian culture, I know, I think like 30 years or maybe even later, we would talk about like uncles and aunties that we knew, right? That ended up coming to you for IVF and that we had no idea because nobody talked about IVF when we were growing up. Like your
Right.
generation did not talk about it,
No,
right?
you
If your
got it.
friends came to you for IVF, it was just hush hush, don't tell anybody, it's
That
completely private.
yes, right.
Why do you think that it was like that? And then what's the trend now? Like, does everybody talk about IVF, or do you still feel like it is
IVF is
still secret?
it's well talked about nowadays, right? It's so open,
Yeah.
right? And there are thousands and thousands of cases now being actually done in USA and all over the world. Actually,
Hmm.
India is one of the most
Productive.
highest country where IVF is, offered.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh, they've just recently have started to introduce, regulations, and where there were no regulations at one time back.
Mm.
So
Yeah, in
Yeah.
India, wasn't it that they were doing the genetic testing for gender and they had to ban that?
yeah, Jeanette, I think US is the only place that I can think of where there is genetic testing with gender.
Mm.
Mm.
I think the rest of the world is not testing for gender.
Right.
I mean, you can
Mm,
test it, but they
Yeah,
cannot,
yeah.
Not legally.
tell the patient.
Base, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
right. Like you can't pick the embryo based on the
Exactly.
gender.
Right.
So
So
Yeah.
why didn't people talk about it
I
before?
think it's just that, it's like something, when you discuss fertility, for instance, right? And you said, oh, the parents were saying, oh, my kids were infertile or for whatever reason. It kind of sounded bad on the family itself or the couple itself that they're not able to produce a child, you know.
Yeah.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
I think the- with time that has actually been now changed in the sense people do accept fertility as a problem,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Which at one point they didn't, right? So
Hmm.
Yeah.
uh,
I
so I
think it
think
just, I
that
think, Dad, you
especially
can,
South Asian culture,
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
brought
I think, like, also, Dad, you can confirm, like, in our culture back in the day, a woman's fertility was her identity, right? Like,
exactly
her job was to get married and produce heirs and children culturally back in the day for the family.
Right.
So if you had to go through something like IVF or fertility drugs or anything like that, that was almost like a you're broken, and that was the mentality. And
Right.
now people have grown and learned the science behind it. It's just like therapy or, and any of those things where when you're trying to help yourself in our culture, unfortunately, it was very taboo. I think even when I was going through it, not many people were talking about it, not just back in like mom and dad's generation, even our own generation about 20 years ago, it was not talked about. And I want to say, even today, there are some people that still think that way. And the purpose of this episode and podcast is to normalize it and say it's okay. Like, it's allowed. You're
Well,
allowed to have these issues, and there is help for it, like there is for your mental health and all the things that, help you. So, normalizing it, I think, is part of what this generation is about in all aspects, especially fertility. Right, Dad?
right. I mean, uh, l- see, I stress and a lot of other stuff in our generation now affects fertility, right? Because there's so much
Mhm.
changes in your hormones, overall reproductive health itself. So th- there's no harm in looking for help, right?
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
I would recommend just, I mean, even if your OBGYN doesn't do anything, then go to the next level, which is the reproductive endocrinologist, who actually
Hmm.
looks into all this much deeper than an OBGYN would.
Yeah.
So,
So,
Dad, if somebody was like, marriage is not on the horizon for me, I do want to eventually have kids when I find the right person, all the things. What age would you advise women to see an RE and just get a baseline of what their reproductive health looks like? What's
yeah,
a good age?
I think beginning at about between 27 to 33, right? In that group, you
Hmm.
should have eggs frozen because those are the ones that will create a baby down the road much easier than if you leave it later. Because a lot of people come at 40, but the eggs are not as good as what they were at 30,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's recommended to have, if you're really thinking about freezing eggs, is to go early and have them frozen. And then there are so many clinics out there, they just do egg freezing now
Okay.
for
Mhm.
younger,
Mhm.
especially in Manhattan, for instance, all this young generation that is
Yeah.
delaying their marriages and all that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's a
I
big
also,
business
yeah.
out there, apparently.
Yeah.
So,
I also have a lot of friends from college that decided not to get married and just have babies. So they had frozen their eggs and now they got sperm donors and had their 2 babies and they're happy and
right,
living their
right. And
life.
it's
It's
as
kind of
Amazing.
long
cool.
those are happening as well,
Yeah.
it's a big thing out here now.
And
And
even
what
egg donation is a big thing, right? Egg donation, sperm donation.
it's a little tough with egg donation and sperm donation is there because that's sperm banks all over the country, all over the world, actually.
You guys got nothing to do.
It takes literally nothing.
Egg, egg banks are there now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are donor banks out there that you can actually, there are thousands of donors that you can select from. So once you get older, then you will have no choice but to go for egg donors,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
right? So it's all available now. It's
Yeah.
not
Mhm.
like.
And the
And there's nothing
technology is
wrong
much better.
with
Yeah.
doing an egg donor. It's just genetically, at least it's half or what. So
Yeah.
Half of a
So that's
yeah.
one option where you freeze your own eggs.
great.
The other option is, I mean, the other kind of availability out there is getting a donor egg. But I know we haven't touched really upon surrogacy, which is a big portion of how people are getting pregnant now, right? Which, Dad, can you touch upon that? Because are you involved in that surrogacy process?
We have surrogates in our clinic too. There are patients who cannot conceive or they cannot carry a child for certain conditions, right?
Hmm.
And they actually opt out to get a surrogate to carry their child. Now, a surrogate would be a carrier only, right? She would just get an embryo created by the couple transplanted into her. It's not a cheap option. It's
Hmm.
pretty expensive, But if you don't have
How
any other
expensive?
choice, there's no, nothing else you can do, right? But
How expensive is it, would
It,
you say?
I
I would say between 80 to 120,000 roughly, I think.
Dad, how long would you tell, like, if a couple has been trying for X amount of time and can't conceive, when would you say, okay, now it's time to get help? Like, how
Uh,
long do you try before you
See, I
say, okay, I
I
need help?
think they say when you start trying
Uh-huh.
and then you don't conceive in the 6 months, go to your OBGYN, tell them what's wrong, and then they will probably try IUI with you if they do that service or refer you to an REI.
Yeah.
That would take over from there. And I think by the time you get there, it'll be a year or 12, 16 months before you even start doing actual treatment on yourself.
Yeah.
So all the testing and all that, you can genetically test embryos now
Yeah.
for chromosomes, right? So
Mhm.
Mm.
if you, for instance, if you had a down baby, you can actually tell by testing on the embryo itself whether it's
Yeah.
going to be a down baby or not, and give them the choice, basically.
Mm.
And is there a certain age that they do the genetic testing versus not doing it?
No, actually, I think nowadays it's pretty common to do genetic testing on everybody when
Oh,
they
okay.
come in for consultations.
Okay.
I mean, there are cases where if they're both genetically have the same gene, then you have to do further testing, which is called testing for genetic on those uh,
He wants to be
wait,
all scientific about it, but then
I know.
he's
Yeah.
like, "Wait,
forgot.
how do I dumb this down for them?"
It's okay.
Or like say what? Nina might get it.
I know.
So
Yeah,
it's
so
called
wait,
PGTM, okay? PGTM.
Okay.
uh-huh.
That's for testing for further genetic stuff.
Okay. Okay.
PGTA is aneuploidy, where actually just test for chromosomes.
Hmm.
Okay, so there's Turner syndrome, so many different chromosome abnormalities which you can test.
Dad, all of these tests for chromosomes and all that stuff, that's all legal, right? Like that's all part of the
Yeah.
process?
Oh yes, yes. I mean, it's so legal. You actually offer it to the couple at the beginning, if they want to do it, if they want to have their embryos tested. Now it's become very common that 100, I would say 99% of the cycles, uh, patients actually have their embryos genetically tested.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Because they
I
don't
feel like
want an abnormal child either, right? So, but
I feel like even when you're pregnant, we do these tests, don't we?
yeah,
Isn't there a
those are
point
called
where you can
prenatal
test
tests.
for
Yes, right.
Yeah.
I mean, you do testing once you're pregnant, right? On your
Mhm.
amniotic fluid and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
this is even before getting pregnant, you can test it. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's
so you
crazy.
can eliminate any abnormal embryos from implanting and just use the
Mm.
normal embryos.
Yeah.
What kind of other stuff can you test for? Like, can you test if they'll have like blue eyes?
No,
No.
What other
Nip
weird
is
stuff
like
can you test for?
there
I mean,
are.
what other weird stuff can you see but you can't tell the
weird
patient?
stuff.
I mean, there's so much you can do genetically on these embryos for
That's so
testing.
crazy.
It's just that a
Yeah.
lot of it is not legal.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, it's a crazy field.
Hmm.
There's so much you can do on this, but a lot of it is not legal at all.
It's
But like
scary.
what?
They're
Like
doing it
Science.
what?
with animals too now, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
They're like
exactly.
doing
Yeah,
all sorts of creating
right.
weird animals.
They
That's
do
I
just
don't know.
science in general. It's such a
It's
crazy
they do
field.
nuclear transfer where they take a nucleus out from a donor egg, put it into a patient's egg, right, to change the
What?
whole morphology of that egg,
What?
so to make
I
it more
can't picture
younger. It is
Ah,
just a
yeah, yeah,
crazy
yeah, yeah.
field.
Wow, that's really crazy.
That's
I
so
just saw
crazy.
somewhere on the news that they created a womb, an artificial womb where you can
Outside
gr-
the body, right?
outside of the body where you
Yeah,
can grow a baby in it.
it's
Like
just crazy.
it's like
This
a
is cool.
see-through womb and it's all like plugged in. I don't know what it does, but it does all the things that a natural womb would do and has all the things. And the baby, there's a fallopian tube and everything, and the baby grows in this artificial womb outside of the body.
Yeah,
It's so crazy. I was like, what?
That is
It's
crazy.
it's
disturbing.
But
It's
you can't
disturbing.
you can't change the makeup, right? Like you can test, meaning like you can say, okay, this embryo has, I don't even, I'm like finding it. What can you tell me about an embryo?
The
So
Like
sex.
what can you see, but you can't tell other people?
no, I mean, it's
No,
we
the
look at the
genetic
quality
testing is the
levels, right?
report. Is the report. You give
Uh,
the report to the
it's in the
Yeah.
physician.
report, right? And
Yeah,
basically
there's
now
no like
AI is going to change
hiding.
the whole world as well, because
Yeah.
now using AI, we can choose the best quality embryo, which has the highest potential of implantation.
Wow.
And that there is so many AI programs out there for this selection of embryos for.
But AI can't take over your job because you are the one that's combining the two ingredients, right? Like
Not
physically.
really.
A robot
With the new
probably
It's
can.
getting
technology,
crazier.
everything is getting automated now.
Mm-hmm.
How
And
can you automate IVF?
A robot can probably put an egg and
Yeah.
sperm together.
everything is done.
Probably even better
Even
than a human.
ICSI, you know what ICSI
Yeah.
is
There's no
intra-cycle,
there's no chance of like
right?
Is
so
that
so
dad's
okay,
phone?
wait. Let's talk a little bit about your lifestyle as an embryologist because when I was going into nursing school and then I was going to go do my masters, I was like, "Dad, let me do women's health and then I'll come work with you and I'll do all the things that you do." And you were like, "No." You were a hard no. Why? Because your lifestyle is like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
to 11 a.m.
That was me back in the days, which I used to work, like you just said, very early, because that's how the whole team could get together at that point, right? We need
Yeah.
a REI, we need an embryologist, we need a nurse, we need an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
All those had to come into the right place. So we had to make sure that we were all available at a certain time. So when we had many cases, we had to start as early as 4 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
just to, accommodate everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's a great field. I mean, it's not a bad field to get into. We have a lot of people who wants to get into that field, but things have changed since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because depends where you work as well, right? I
Yeah.
was doing my own lab and things,
Yeah.
so it was a little difficult.
Yeah.
But if you work at a place that has like thousands of patients, it's a different story. You have a whole team of 20 people doing this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it makes a difference.
So
But
Yeah.
was it easier when you were at like St. Luke's? Was it easier when you had that team there versus in your own private
no,
clinic?
it was, see, when I was back in New York, it was just starting right at that time. So
Yeah.
we didn't have big teams. They were small.
Mm. Okay.
And then, of
Yeah.
course, I was so busy trying to juggle between embryology and jewelry. So,
And
Yeah.
us
The
three.
store.
and usually, so
I
it
know.
was,
I remember dad braiding our hair and mom was like, gotta go. Okay. See you later.
or driving you from school to, wherever.
But I
Yeah.
do like when I think about the dots matching backwards, right? For you, when you were in your teens, so like high school, middle school, high school, all of those years, you were doing jewelry repair with Bapuji, right? Like the watches and like
Oh,
that
that was
fine
back in Africa,
detail,
right?
That
Yeah.
was in
right?
Africa.
That was
Yeah.
in,
So like I just imagine the precision it took for those like teeny tiny screws and like all the little like parts of a watch and then to be able to do that with like micro anatomy.
Organism.
micro tools.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's crazy. So it probably helped you like
Couldn't get me
get that
steadier, right?
fine
Absolutely.
control
Yes,
of like
true.
your hand-eye coordination to be able to do that. It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
I
cool.
mean, it's yeah, when this IVF, when I got into IVF, it was like very fascinating for me.
Yeah.
I was dealing with human lives, right?
Yeah.
Think about
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
Dad, for those people who don't know truly what IVF is, can you explain the process? We know it starts with not being able to conceive for at least 6 months. So what happens? What they come to you and what?
So the process of getting infertility treated is like, first you try for 6 months on your own.
Mhm.
You do your timing and all that
Mhm.
stuff, right? And if nothing happens, then you go to your OBGYN and say, look, I'm not getting pregnant. Once you start that process, then things will start moving much more faster. because once they try, they'll probably try IUI cycles with you, right? To put you on Clomid, like, like Sheena was saying earlier.
What is IUI?
Intrauterine insemination. What they do is they wash the sperm, and, sometimes the sperm never makes it to the egg, right? When you have natural intercourse. So basically, what happens is you can wash the sperm in a certain media, then you would actually put that sperm right into past the cervix, into the endometrium, where the egg would actually come in from the fallopian tubes, right? And then hopefully you'll get pregnant that way, right?
It
And that's all about timing as well. But
when they do it that way, there's less chance of the sperm dying on its journey to the egg, basically.
Yeah.
and
So
it's
that they're trying to
timing, so
give it the
the egg
best
has come
chance.
here and the sperm actually meets
Yeah,
directly
best
with
chance.
that. So that's,
So it's still natural in a way, like
Yeah.
natural conceiving, right?
natural.
Because you're
Yeah.
you're just trying to get it to where it needs to go.
Quickly.
Yeah.
wow, Nina knows
Yeah,
more than
fast
me.
pass.
It's
Easy
like-
pass. Easy pass for the first.
Yeah, it's the easy pass lane.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So you've tried IUI. That didn't work.
That didn't work. And then I think your next step would be IVF. And IVF is expensive. There are insurance companies in certain states that cover it. Like, New York State is mandated, New Jersey is mandated, Massachusetts is mandated. They have to accept insurance, right? So, I mean, those are things that you have to actually work into the fact that if your insurance can accept for you to do IVF.
Yep.
Then you start on, so you do your preliminary stuff, like all your testing done, right? Genetic testing and all that stuff with your blood work. They test everything, infectious diseases and all that stuff. And then you start the course of injections. Then they'll put you on a course of fertility drug injections. I mean, I can go into mentioning some names to you, but
No, that's
I
okay.
Don't want to. I have
It just
PTSD from it.
Well,
I
what's
know.
the purpose of the injection, Dad? What is it
So
doing?
basically, in a natural cycle, you have one egg
That's like
per cycle that gets, into your ovary for it to be fertilized, right? When you do when you do injections, it causes multiple follicles, so you have multiple eggs formed, right? So
Okay.
you monitor that now. In IVF, you would monitor that every other day, see how they're growing. You do your blood work as well. You do, you measure your hormones at the same time. So whenever you come to the clinic for a scan, you would have blood taken to measure your hormones. And then at a certain point, when you are ready, you give an HCG, it's called HCG, which actually gets the eggs to be released.
Okay.
So you have 36 hours before you can actually go and take those eggs out, before they get released. So you actually do an ultrasound scan, and you would take a needle and then go into the follicles. They're called follicles. You would actually go in there, take the liquid out, and you hand it on to the embryologist, who would check if there's an egg in there or not. And then that's how you would collect all the eggs.
That's called an egg retrieval. And I know that
There
because
you
every
go.
day that Dad would leave at 4 a.m., he would say, I have an egg
I have an
retrieval.
egg
I have an
retrieval."
egg retrieval. I have an egg retrieval.
Yeah, and that was
That's
probably part of why you needed to go at that time, because certain
Such a small
patients
window.
had that, like, it was
right.
36 hours and then it had to be retrieved. So they only
Yeah.
have this small window to
A very
take them
small
out.
window. Otherwise, they would
Mm.
ovulate and you would lose the whole cycle.
Yeah.
Right. The prior to the egg retrieval, does that take a toll on the woman's body? Like, do you actually feel like, is there a physical component to that, or is it just everything's happening inside your body? Sheen, Dad,
Yes,
whoever wants to answer.
it does take a toll on the woman's body physically, and it takes a toll on the woman mentally. Right, Dad?
Yeah, I think every patient is different, right?
Yeah.
So, it's their willpower basically as well at the same time, right?
And
Yeah.
they're
How they
gigantic
can,
injections,
you know,
bro. They're big.
but most of them get anesthesia, so it's not too,
Right.
they don't feel the pain at the time of retrieval, but it takes another like
Mm.
half an hour, 40 minutes for them to recover from the
Yeah.
anesthesia. And once they are recovered, then they go home. They have to
Mm.
rest for the rest of the day because they can't drive or anything. So,
And then that's when you work your magic. You have the eggs.
then all the eggs are in the lab. And then the embryologist gets the sperm sample from the partner. That's processed. And then depending on the movement and everything on the sperm, then they would decide to do ICSI or just to do straight insemination. So ICSI is called intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So what you do, you take one sperm, you take an egg, and the egg has to be matured. Okay, so once you retrieve the eggs, you have to look at the maturity of the eggs as well. But when you do insemination, you don't even know the maturity of the eggs because it's very difficult to see it with all the cells around it. Right. So when you do ICSI, you take all the cells around, you get the bare egg, and you can look at the maturity of that egg. And you would decide to do, then at that point, you would do ICSI, right? Cytoplasmic sperm. You take one sperm, inject it into the egg, and leave the eggs for another 18 hours for you to see if they fertilize or not. Not every egg would fertilize. But in our clinic, we have almost 95% that fertilize.
Yes, you do.
Woo!
What did you do for
miracle.
me, Dad? ICSI?
Yes. Yeah. Now we let them grow for 5 days. We check every other day,
Okay.
see how they're growing. So first day is fertilization to make sure they're fertilized. And then the following day, we would check, see if they started to divide. At that point,
It's
they
really
would
cool. They go
mix
into
up.
2 and then
Yeah,
4, and then it's like
exactly. They start dividing.
until there are a bunch of
Then
cells.
you do day 5, there will be multiple cells, and it's called blastocyst at that point. Okay. So blastocyst is when you would do a biopsy and you take a certain portion of the trophectoderm cells out of that embryo and send that for genetic testing. And the part of the embryo, you freeze it at that time and you store it in your place.
Oh my God, Sean
And
and
then
Shaylin went
those
through
can
all
be
of that?
saved.
Sean and Shaylin, no. So Sean and Shaylin, they didn't go through all of that because Sheena had a fresh transfer on day 5. What happened day 5?
They didn't have to freeze it. They
We
just,
did not do genetic testing.
once it was ready, they just put them in.
So she basically got 2 embryos implanted on day 5 of a cycle. Right after 5 days of growing the embryos, then she had 2 of them put back into her.
Without any genetic testing?
Without any testing at all. That's just us looking at it visually and say, these are the best 2 embryos to put back.
Is it because that wasn't common then, or just wasn't
It was
necessary?
not available then.
It wasn't. Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Good eye, Dad. Good
Yeah,
eye.
touch wood. My God.
Yeah. I got 2 geniuses going round.
And then Sheena had to go and try on her own.
I know.
Yeah.
And then she saw the result of what happens when
So
Dad
we
doesn't
have a
pick up.
comparison now.
I know. I was like, damn it. Joking. Stop it.
Oops, sorry.
We love them all. We love them all.
Just also a quick note, like when we did mine, Dad, we had a lot of frozen as well, right?
So Sheena had quite a few embryos. Which the other ones we froze. So while they were frozen, she already conceived with the third one on her own, with no assisted services on that. 5 years later, she started bugging me to have her other embryos tested so she can have a girl.
Yeah.
But there
And
was a
Sammy said
strict
no.
no.
Sammy was like, then I tried to be like, Dad, we really don't even need Sammy. Like, literally, he's not part of this equation. Just find out if there's a girl and let's go. And he's like, but he can sue me. I'm like, he's not gonna sue you. Get out of here.
I mean, you cannot do.
Until you show up with a 4th kid. He's like, yo, where did this happen?
Consents are very important in this field. Okay.
Yeah.
So because
Not when
genetically,
your
the embryo
dad
belongs
is
to
doing
both
it.
of them, right? So
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
You could have had
Even-
one
then-
more granddaughter.
even for
But
us to destroy embryos, we have to make sure we have consent from both the parents. We
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
destroy them unless we have both the consents.
But
Right.
that's like a whole ethical consideration too, right?
That's
Sheen, you went back
another
and forth and back
whole-
and forth.
You heard
with-
about Alabama? There, you can't
Yeah.
destroy embryos and things.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Now
Now,
But then what
especially-
happens? They're just frozen in it for eternity?
for eternity, yeah.
As
and the
long as you're paying
partners
for
have
the
to
freezing,
yeah,
they're
and then the
just staying
partners have to
frozen.
pay for that, right? The
Yes,
parents have
there's
to
a
pay for that.
storage fee every
Yeah.
year.
We always knew we wanted 3, so we were like, "Let's freeze them, and then when it's time for the 3rd, we'll figure it out." And then once we had the 3rd naturally, of course, I was when and we found out it was a boy, I was like, I want a girl. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it." And then when Sammy said no, I think my threshold was 40. I was like, after 40, if I haven't gotten a yes, it's not happening. And that's when we had to start thinking about what to do with the embryos, right, Dad? And then
Yes.
and then we were between donating them or not. And and also Sammy's family is they were not happy with these embryos like being in this limbo of life, like not living life and not able to like go on to their next. So they weren't comfortable with that either. So after 40, once I knew we weren't having the girl through IVF, we just decided not to keep them and move on.
And I would recommend to a lot of young couples going through this to actually decide at the beginning what they want to do with embryos, because it gets very emotional and difficult later on.
Mhm.
So
Mm,
if nowadays the consent forms are very, very strict in terms
Mhm.
of you having to decide early rather than later, because it becomes a burden for the clinics and the storage people. If you do not decide, and then they're not able to get hold of you, and then they have to make decisions for you because you're not contacting the clinics.
yeah.
Right.
Sometimes marital statuses change, right?
Yeah,
And
people
that
get
also
divorced, and
becomes
then they're one of them doesn't want to sign.
yeah,
It just gets very complicated.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So now, but thank God now a lot of consent forms now allow up to 2 years of non-payment and things like that. If you don't,
Yeah.
then they can
Yeah.
destroy your embryos.
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
So,
Okay. So now we know how this whole thing happens, the scientific part of it at least.
Mhm.
Sheen and Dad, let's talk about that journey and just that journey when it comes to a lot of people, right? Like
Mhm.
there's the scientific part of it, but then I think the emotional part of it is just as difficult and hard to navigate for
Mhm.
both the patient and Dad, you, the doctor. So,
It's also important to think about and recognize that not every attempt at IVF or IUI is
Mhm.
successful,
Mhm.
right?
right.
So we have a lot of couple friends who tried and tried again and tried again and tried and might have gone through 10 cycles of IVF
Mhm.
and never had that baby that they always dreamed of. And
Mhm.
that emotional roller coaster is like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like
Next level.
hard, it's like we know it because, we grew up in this world. So we saw, cycles of happiness and cycles of disappointment over and
Mhm.
over.
Mhm.
But how do you support the people who truly, genuinely just wanted that baby but never got to have it?
So, like for us, I can very clearly understand that we were very blessed that it was within the family and it was a knowledgeable field, and being my dad, it made it very easy and quick, but we also understand the other side of it. For me, thankfully, the process was easy, and dad was a big reason for that and so many other factors. But dad, I understand that it's not for everybody. So dad, how do you uh, manage and help couples that go through 10, 12 cycles? Like that's a lot. That one cycle was a lot for me on my body and even emotionally. And the couples and women that go through all these cycles, how do you manage that?
so we have quite a few patients who actually do multiple cycles and don't end up pregnant
Mhm.
using their own gametes, right? So I think the next step would be to try different approach and use like donor eggs or donor sperm, depending on what the problem is, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times with donor eggs, they do tend to get pregnant because you're using younger eggs at that point.
Mm,
But
right.
they go through a lot of counseling for this, right? And
Okay.
there are counselors out there that actually can work with you on this, on this approach,
Mm.
about having to decide on a donor egg or not.
Yeah.
So those are things, there are tools available nowadays that can, eliminate a lot of your fears. Uh, and I think that's something that has come over the years and it's very successful. I think a lot of these huge clinics have their own counselors and genetic counselors as well. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
so I think
Do
that's
you
made it a lot easier for a lot of these patients. But then there are patients who do not want donor eggs. Yeah, like they
Yeah.
keep trying. They keep trying. And I guess at the end, they probably end up with adoption, for instance. Or
Okay.
by that time, they're so old, by the time, you saw
Yeah.
this new story today, right? Mick Jagger, who's 87, has a 9-year-old or something,
Oh, wow.
So it's, having to parenting at that age it's hard,
It
right?
is
yeah.
hard.
Do you
So,
think that there's a point at which it's too many times or too many attempts, or it's okay, you can just keep trying until your body says, "I'm done."
right. I think at this point is at the time the patient says, okay, that's enough. And there are times we have to tell them that's enough now too,
Yeah.
otherwise there's no end to that, right?
Yeah.
It's very expensive in a way, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
And as a female gets older, even for that egg retrieval part, you get fewer and fewer eggs,
of
right?
course,
Like
right.
when
Yeah.
they're 27 and they come in, they might have 30 eggs. And then when they come in at 35, they might have 7 eggs
Yeah.
Right.
or
Yeah.
like,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So
of
like
course.
all of that.
Every cycle is different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm,
I mean, there are times when we have the first cycle, genetically, all the embryos are abnormal. So you can't even
Mm-hmm.
use that. Second time they come around is the other way around. They have 90% that are normal. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
every cycle you create is different.
Yeah.
That's why you have
Mm-hmm.
multiple cycles, just to make sure, you're not
Yeah. I also
eliminating
Yeah.
think it's
your problem.
really cool that when a girl is born, she's born with all the eggs she'll ever have in her life. I think that's
Yes.
kind of cool.
Right.
It's not like sperm that just like, hey, I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you have a finite number.
Yep.
We're going to hyper accelerate those coming, to
Yeah.
Yeah.
fruition. It's kind of cool, the whole
It is
It
science
is
crazy.
cool.
behind it.
It
Yeah,
is
it's millions down to few.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Right?
crazy.
so
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that is
crazy.
crazy. Let's
It's
talk about how this is just such a normal conversation in our household. And I
Well,
think
okay.
what
Yeah.
sorry, I'm going to just say one thing because this is something that my friends still make fun of me till this day. And it's because I would say something like, "Oh, I'm not gonna get pregnant. My dad will give me my babies." And, like, they would just think that that was, like, the craziest thing I've ever said without any sort of context, right? So, it's just, like, the whole concept of IVF and fertility and the words,
Babies.
the eggs and the babies and the sperms
Yeah.
and the embryos, it was all just part of our everyday life, and I think it's so important that even, like, kids today growing up know that this is a thing, and this
Yeah.
is, making a baby is really hard, and once they learn how that's made and, we're
Yeah.
still on that part of our lives, but,
Yeah.
like, it's so nice that kids will now be able to normalize IVF, and so, like, when they're growing up and, they do wanna delay this process, they know
Mm-hmm.
that there's an option out there.
Yeah. Well, funny story. In ninth grade, actually, last year, I think the boys had told dad this too. They, in science class, biology, they learned about IVF, in vitro fertilization. And Shaylin walks up to his teacher. He's like, my nana does that. And he made Sean and I just like that. I was like,
And the teacher was
Shaylin.
like, ah.
and and the teacher was like, that's very interesting, tell me more. And of course he goes on to tell him, like, we went to the lab and we saw a sperm and an egg and how my nana put them together. And the teacher was like, A+ for you, A+ for you. And like, Shaylin's the master of words, so I'm like, Shaylin, and he's like, Mom, she was so impressed, she gave me an A+ on all my class. It's like, oh my God. So
Well, I
funny.
also
Yeah,
think about like when we were younger and we all got our first period. Each of
Periods.
us.
Yep.
We
I was
ran to
gonna.
dad and we're like,
Yep.
what
Yeah.
do we do?
We were like,
Yup.
Dad. I was like, Dad, I'm bleeding. He's like, okay, calm down.
Here's a
Yeah,
pad.
and that's even like that's such a funny part, right? Like I feel like our health and our like our women's body health, like it's always been a topic that we talk to dad about. It was never
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
mom was just more of like, get things done. Like get it make it
Yeah,
happen.
yeah,
But like it was dad who had like the birds and bees conversation with me. And it was like dad who, like you said, we like talked to about our periods. And like, dad, what a blessing that even like for
Is
for
it?
our friends, when our friends come to us and they even mention any sort of issue that they're having, like we've been trying, it's not working, like we have the first person that we think of that we have complete access to is you. And I've probably sent countless of my friends to you
Yeah.
about their fertility issue. And never has it been like, okay, like make them do a patient intake. It was always like, give him my phone number. Let's have a conversation with what's going on, and we can like set them up if something is going like if it's
They need
Right.
help.
deemed
Yeah.
necessary. Yeah.
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 What a
What was it
blessing
like
you
growing
are.
up, Dad? What was it like for you with us coming to you every time, teaching us all the things? Was it normal?
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I kind of looked at you more like a patient at that time rather than,
Yeah.
a family kind of thing, So it became natural to talk to you guys about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was easier for me to actually say, since Sheena went through it, it was much easier.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of patients that tell me, especially Sheena's friends, I said, talk to Sheena. She's been through this. She knows all this.
Yeah.
So it's easier to come out that way.
Yeah.
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 And they trust you more as well at that point.
Yeah. It's always easier to talk to someone who's been through it and
Right.
then go to the person that, they trust. And that
It's
just
so
happens to
weird.
be our dad.
It's so weird nowadays when I talk to people and I say, oh, great, such a nice kid and all that. And when I say IVF, oh, my kid went through IVF too. It's like you
Yeah.
would not
So
never
many.
know otherwise.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so
So
many.
there's
So
so
many.
many kids out there through IVF because I'm sure it's a big problem. Fertility is a huge
But
problem.
I also think like this whole taking for granted thing. Dip, you have your own story with dad.
We did try for a year. We tried for a year, and then we went to dad's doctor. And at that time, that doctor had known us and our family for
Right.
what, 30, 40
An
years,
eternity. Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So at that time, he was like, listen, if you want to do this, like if you guys want to do this, let's do this. We had a big trip coming up. So he was like, after your trip, we'll start on the drugs and everything. So thankfully on that trip, we found out we were pregnant. But yeah, it was just always
Natural,
available,
right?
right? It was the concern of not being able to get pregnant. Thankfully, God bless, we didn't it wasn't so taxing on us
So
because there
was
was
it the
always this
first
option.
6 months, like I said, you tried and then
Yeah.
It was one whole year that we tried.
one more year. So like I said, it's between,
Yeah.
6 months to 12 months.
Dad, I do want to ask you, what does it feel like when God willing it works?
We go through these emotions a lot because there's so much hard work put into each and every case. It's it's quite a joy when we see a positive result.
Yeah.
Not even birth at that point. This is just the first pregnancy test, and we find out they're pregnant. I mean, you can't believe it.
Yeah.
And now it's all about stats, right? So we want to keep our stats at 70, right? It's like
Yeah.
we want to get everybody pregnant,
Take the emotion out.
I mean,
You
that's
get a baby.
I,
Yeah.
and it's a great feeling to see how many kids we have created out of all
Yeah.
this. So
Do a lot of people stay in touch with you?
we get pictures from everyone. Everyone. I mean, our
Oh,
billboards are packed with kids.
so cute.
So,
So
yeah,
sweet.
it's just
And
And through
even within our circles, right? Like
Yeah.
whenever
True.
they come to visit, they'll be like, "Oh, we have to go see your dad. These
I
are
know,
the ones
right?
he
It's
made." Like,
Yeah,
"Aw."
exactly. I know it's so cute. It's so
it's
cute.
it's
Yeah.
it's and I try to take a picture if when they're growing up. It's just
So
fascinating,
I
cute.
know.
Yeah.
you know.
Have
I
you
know.
is there anything that IVF kids Is there any way that they're different from naturally conceived kids?
Sheena.
Just that you know.
They're just
Just that you
special
know.
little humans that walk around saying Nana made me and my Nana made me. I'm like, you really need to put some context in that. It's really not appropriate to walk around and say my Nana made me. Like they are loud and proud. Like, we're perfect because Nana made us this way.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
So dad is constantly talking about retiring, and we are absolutely like, no, there's two things. One, he's such a type A person, perfectionist. He truly does not believe that anybody could do the work like he does it, which I believe too. So training someone to do what he does, I feel like has been his biggest challenge. And number two, I feel like dad does God's work. Honestly, outside of God, dad does God's work. And I feel like that should just remain intact forever and ever and ever till you can
Poor dad.
see and to put it together, all
Thank
the
you.
things. Like, I think you should keep going at
Shane,
a
we're
smaller
gonna start
capacity.
making you wake up at 4 o'clock.
I know,
No,
true.
but dad doesn't do those calls anymore, right, dad?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
It's,
He's taken a step back, but like
yeah.
still,
Thank God I have a good team here where I work right
Yeah.
now.
Dad,
And
Yeah.
what's keeping you from retiring? Is
Me.
it the
It's me.
joy
It's
of
me.
of
It's me.
staying
being
away
able
from
to
the wife.
create?
Staying
What
away
is
from
it?
my wife, Dad.
Staying away from the wife.
Welcome to your 70s.
Mic drop. Okay.
It has nothing to do with the babies, actually.
I know.
Yeah.
Actually, it's true. I don't think in that your generation, two people should be retired at the same time.
I don't think in any
Makes everybody go
generation,
crazy.
not even
Any
in our
generation.
generation.
Yeah, that's true.
That should not
That's
even
true.
happen in our generation.
Yeah.
Hell
Somebody should be
no.
doing something
Yeah.
at all times.
100%.
That keeps your marriage intact for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, for anyone listening, however your family was built, your story is valid and appreciated and always welcome on this podcast. We know that fertility struggles are more common now, and we would love to be able to support you in any way. Dad, Sheena, having gone through the process, we are all here if you have any questions of how the process works, whether you're in it, you've gone through it, you're about to face it. We're here. DM Sheena, DM Love S&D Podcast on Instagram. We will get the messages to Dad if you have any questions for him. You can find all of our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Again, we're on Instagram on Love S&D Podcast. And thank you for listening with Love S&D. Thank you,
Bye,
Dad.
Bye.
Bye, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.